start with, I would like to request and invite founder and executive chairman of Foundation of Data Protection Professionals in India and the moderator of our panel discussion. May I request you, Mr. Vijaya Shankar, to kindly join us on the stage. And let me tell you that more popularly known as Navi is a pioneer in the field of cyber law and data protection. He's the Cyber Law and Data Protection Consultant Chairman, Foundation of Data Protection Professionals in India. With this, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to get started by inviting our first panelist for this panel discussion, who is the SVP and Global Business Head, Cybersecurity and Risk Management, Tech Mahindra, Mr. Maninder Bharadwaj. May I request you, sir, to kindly join us on the stage, and who is the Global Head for Cyber Security and Risk Management at Tech Mahindra. While responsible for P&L CSRM, he is focused on growth of global CSRM in a holistic manner. With this, ladies and gentlemen, our next panelist for the day is going to be Mr. T.R. Ganesh. May I request you, sir, to kindly join us on the stage, who's a graduate in Control and Instrumentation Engineering, having 35 plus years of experience in various premium power sectors, PSUs covering generation, transmission, and grid management. With this, ladies and gentlemen, our second last panelist for this one is going to be our Group Director and IT Head, DRDO-GTRE, Mr. Ajith V. May I request you, sir, to kindly join us on the stage, please. Who's a certified ethical hacker from EC Council, certified ISO 27001 lead auditor, life member of Computer Society of India. With this, ladies and gentlemen, our last panelist for this panel discussion is the Legal and Regulatory Affairs Director at Zoom and has an experience in legal, banking, commercial, procurement, privacy, and a lot more. He is the first Indian Air Force officer to undergo the prestigious Judge Advocate Staff course with the U.S. Air Force at JAG School, Alabama. None other than Mr. Shivaram Prakash. May I request you, sir, to kindly join us on the stage. All right, before we get started with the panel discussion, quickly checking on the energy level of the audience in the house now, because we have, we kind of had our lunch. Are you good on the energy level? Yes. I'm sure that we can do better than this. Are you ready to witness what's coming up next? Yes. One last time, are you ready? Yes. Wonderful. Now we can kickstart with our panel discussion.
We have here four gentlemen from different areas of operation, two of them from the government sector, two of them from the private sector, and multinational like Zoom and Tech Mahindra. So I hope we will be having a very interesting discussion on this CERT-In guidelines. See, I have been working on Information Technology Act 2000 from 1998, that is before the act was born. And it has been an endeavor right from those days to tell industries that there is an act called Information Technology Act. This is not IT Act. It defines the way you do your IT business. But it has not been easy to impress upon the industry about why this law is important. Then in 2008, this Information Technology Act was amended and it became an Information Security Act. Even at that time, the industry did not realize the importance of this act. In fact, for a long time, people were asking, do we have a law in India for information, for cyber crimes? Because in other countries, we used to have laws called Cyber Abuse Act or something like that. So the awareness and thereafter providing some kind of an importance to this law was completely absent in the Indian IT industry. I can say that with some kind of emphasis. But this CERT-In guidelines which came on 28th of April this year suddenly created a big wave in the industry with one specific say indication there that data breaches have to be reported within 6 hours. That actually created the real, I think, interest of the industry, because they suddenly realized that they are using something called data breach, and CISOs and CIOs immediately recognized it is something to do with their work, because they are aware of data breach. By this time GDPR has been in place, so people have been talking about data breach in different contexts, and data breach to be reported within 6 hours to a government agency suddenly woke up the entire industry. So to that extent, I actually think it was a good thing that this particular guideline came. Earlier in February 2022, there was what was called intermediary guidelines, which also evoked some interest, but some people went to Supreme Court. You know, Supreme Court is very, very sympathetic to the industry. Anything you take against the government, they will immediately issue a notice, in some cases stop or stay. So people know that they took the digital intermediary guidelines and digital media rules to Supreme Court, and every one of us will know then it will lie there for some more time. So that interest died down. But this 28th April 2022 guideline has really stirred up some kind of an interest. And that is why we are trying to discuss it today. Now, what I have thought of doing in this panel is, since every one of you might not have had sufficient time to study the CERT-In guidelines, I hope I am wrong, but as a moderator I am presuming that, I will take 10 minutes to explain what is CERT-In guidelines and then take it to the discussion of experts, so that when they are giving their views, you will know the context. Fine? And I would expect a lot of questions also from your end. Now, I am starting this presentation with the picture of Hanuman. Why? I have been telling this for last 10 years that CERT-In came into existence in 2008 with the amendment. Prior to that, it was not a statutory body. Worldwide, CERT-In was always a kind of a academic body. Only in India, in the 2008 amendments, they declared CERT-In as an authority and gave some quasi-judicial powers. So Indian CERT-In is completely different from the concept of CERT-In in Malaysia or US or something like that, where universities started CERT-In. So in fact, way back in 2000, 2001, I had requested a number of IT companies in Bangalore, including the Infosec and Wipros, to start a CERT-In in private sector. But again, nobody understood the importance of cyber security, and none of these people responded. Subsequently, in 2008, government made this CERT-In as a statutory organization. Today, it is the apex cyber security organization in India. So all the CISOs and others should think that if there is one organization in India which is called the cyber security organization of the country, that is CERT-In. But CERT-In itself doesn't know its powers. That is why I am giving this Hanuman, because we all know from the legendary thing that Hanuman never knew what was his powers. So when he was in a position that where he had to jump over the ocean, he thought it is not his cup of tea. It was only Jambavanta who actually told him that, no, you have this power, because of a curse you are not remembering it. Then he realized that a power. Same way, CERT-In has a lot of power. they can start prosecuting corporates for not responding to their directives with an imprisonment of 1 year. Okay? And they can initiate action so that an organization can become liable for several offenses in Information Technology Act, for which imprisonment could be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 7 years. There is at least one section which says life imprisonment. Now, these criminal offenses which are there in Information Technology Act can be invoked by CERT-In when in the data breach notification, if it identifies that this data breach may have a linkage to some other offense, it is within their rights. They can also initiate an action for civil liabilities with the adjudicators under Information Technology Act. You know, Information Technology Act has got IT secretaries who are the adjudicators. They have got powers to hear civil claims up to 5 crores, and beyond 5 crores you can take it to the civil court. Now, this CERT-In based on your data breach notification can simply forward it through email to the IT secretary of this state, any of the states where it is relevant. Of course, all these states have got IT secretaries who are the adjudicators. Okay? They can just send a mail, and that can be taken up for suo moto action by the particular IT secretary as an adjudicator, so that he can impose penalties. So even before the GDPR kind of liability, India also planned to have a data protection law which has been for the time being postponed. It would have, if it had been there, we would have talked about 2% of turnover as penalty, 4% of turnover as penalty. Now it is not there. But IT secretary, the adjudicator, has got powers inherent, 5 crores. Beyond that, the person who has got a claim can go to the court. This imprisonment or civil liability can be triggered by the CERT-In Director General based on either the submitted data breach notification or his own powers, his own observation. Somebody sending a complaint, some press writing about a data breach. That is why I say that CERT-In has got all these powers. You may even say draconian powers, but so far we are all happy that the CERT-In director does not realize that he has got the powers. He was like the Hanuman at that time, and if and when he wakes up, realizes, we are all in for some kind of a shock. And one of the reasons why suddenly the CERT-In has become active is because of this Data Protection Act which was withdrawn. Data Protection Act thought of a data protection regulator, data protection authority. And there was some confusion if there is a data breach. Data breach may consist of personal data breach, non-personal data breach. Then who will have the authority to take data breach notifications and decide about that? Then CERT-In realized that if there is going to be a DPA in India, then probably CERT-In will have no relevance. If everybody is going to complain to the DPA, what should I do? You know, in the government, power is very important. So suddenly I think somebody realized that if we don't make public know that we are in existence, then our existence is at risk. I'm just putting it in some lighter way. Don't give any new meaning into it. But then this particular CERT-In guidelines of 28.4 came in. Of course, the February 22 guideline of digital intermediaries in digital media was triggered by the fight between Twitter and the government of India. It was more towards the social media. This was particularly to ensure that CERT-In will have some role to play even if data protection authority is set up. I think that is my reading of it. But now that that is not going to come, there will be some redistribution. But now that there is no data protection authority, CERT-In remains the only authority which has got some kind of a quasi-judicial powers to prosecute companies. Very recently, I think 6th June or 16th June, there was another important notification of CERT-In which all of you should remember. A notification was issued that ICICI Bank, HDFC Bank, and I think NPCI systems, their RTGS system, NEFT systems, they were declared as protected systems under Section 70 of Information Technology Act. And CERT-In is the implementation authority for this Section 70, whatever security requirements are there. One of the security requirements is that once a system is declared as a protected system, then CERT-In director will become a member of the cyber security committee, governance committee of the organization. Every information security policy of the organization has to be cleared by this committee, which means it has to be vetted by the CERT-In director. Please imagine what will be the implications of that. And so far, CERT-In never thought of declaring, either CERT-In or ministry did not think of declaring any non-governmental organization, private sector organization as a protected system, because protected system was supposed to be only critical IT infrastructure system, and we were all thinking that only government agencies will be coming under that, like defense or something like that. But this was the first time where ICICI Bank and HDFC Bank, which are listed companies in the share market, plus NPCI were declared protected systems. Now, those of you who are in the finance domain in the earlier days, you know, whenever a company goes sick, Reserve Bank of India would appoint an RBI representative to sit on the board. Remember? Many of the companies. Now I think after the NCLT came up, the need for that is less. This person, you will have to give him a cabin, he will sit there and all checks will be signed by him. Now a similar thing is happening in the information security area with this latest guideline. That is the power of CERT-In, which all of us in the private sector has to remember. Okay. Now that is why I have put this Hanuman picture there. Just remember that it's a very, very powerful quasi-judicial system, and if the person who is in charge of that is like our Sheshan, who headed the election commission at one point of time, then he will assume the power. Otherwise, power will be there and somebody will not implement it, but you never know when things will change. So to discuss these consequences, I have here Mr. Maninder, Bharadwaj, Ganesh, Ajith, and Mr. S.K. Prakash, who is also my co-member in Foundation of Data Protection Professionals in India, one of the early members of our system. We will try to discuss that. I'm sorry Ajith's photograph is not here, but anyway, he's here. Okay. Now, very, very briefly, I will try to give the introduction like which I started now, and then list out the essence of these guidelines, and then we will ask the experts to give their comments. So, as I already explained the importance, CERT-In is a statutory organization, and it is a nodal agency for critical information infrastructure. And in the 16th June 2022, this critical IT infrastructure concept has come to the private sector. It has got powers, it has also got duties. Now, if CERT-In does not do something, there can be a PIL to ask CERT-In why they are not doing this. Okay, so if they want to remain in a sleep mode, it is possible that somebody may wake up and then file a thing that CERT-In is not doing any work. So that way also they can be woken up. Now, this Data Protection Act is not there, therefore perhaps this is the sole authority, then perhaps it will be, it could be even more powerful. One of the powers is to call for information. This CERT-In has got the powers to call for information from any IT user in India, including an individual. So therefore, that power is there. Any service providers, including intermediaries, data centers, body corporates, the term body corporate also extends to partnership firms, etc. They will all have to comply with the directions of CERT-In, failing which they are exposed to prosecution, which can have a punishment of 1 year only for not following the directions, not for data breach consequences and other things. That is different. Okay. So far, CERT-In has not used it, but let us assume that they will remain like this. Okay. So the guidelines have come from various these things. 27th October was when this CERT-In was first formed. Then 29th April 2016, there is an important guideline. You all may have to refer to that, part of which was replaced by this 28th April 2022. In between, there was an order on 4th January and 27th January. All these information you can get from the web sources. If you don't get it anywhere, visit my site navi.org, naavi.org. Don't go to navi.co. That is not my website. That is an imposter. Okay. Because I every day receive calls from people that, are you giving me a loan, or why my loan application is not sanctioned and other things. Okay, fine. Just to make a mention, naavi.org. Now these are the main 8 points which has been spoken of in 28th April guideline, which we will discuss. One is, all network clocks will have to be synchronized in time and synchronized to an Indian recognized source of time, like the NIC system or I think NPL system. Now we will discuss this, how it will affect you. Second is, data breaches have to be reported within 6 hours. Directives will have to be responded within a short time, maybe within 24 hours. When we say this response or reporting, don't think that you are supposed to give a final answer within that time space. You have to respond, you have to acknowledge and respond. Keep that in mind. Point of contact have to be identified for 24/7 contact. And the name, email address, telephone number should be made available on the website and reported to CERT-In today. You should have done this already by this time. You should have filed a particular form to the CERT-In indicating your point of contact. This point of contact is different from the CISO, different from any other things. At best, you can combine the compliance officer's role with the point of contact, but 24/7, which means that if he goes on leave, you should have a substitute in place. So your policy, you have to draw up a policy for CERT-In guideline compliance, different from all your information security policies. One of the things you have to put there is, what do I do if I have to give leave to this point of contact? Who will be the substitute? And how you will switch over? These are things. Log records of all devices have to be maintained for 180 days. All devices handling data, which means virtually everything. Okay, personal data, non-personal data. In case you are providing any services like data centers and others, and you are providing it as a service to subscribers, the subscriber data like name, address, including IP address from which the person was onboarded, that kind of data should be kept for 5 years. Okay, this log records is 180 days on a rollover basis. This registration of subscribers is for 5 years. KYC wherever financial and other transactions are there, that also for 5 years. Then lastly, technically you should be capable of recreating a transaction for analysis. The transaction records should be retained in such a manner that you should be able to recreate the transactions. I will ask one of the technical people to explain what it essentially means. That is, the data packets which you are trying to save, it is not a log record saving. I think it is a little more than log records saving. your systems should be able to recreate a particular this thing. So these are the 8 points. I hope now all of you have understood the importance of certain guidelines. That is the most important thing, because all of you are capable of finding your own ways of doing it if it comes to it. But we should all first appreciate the importance. That is why I took a little time in explaining this. Now we will go to this point by point. Let us start with this time synchronization. I don't know whether it is something new. You must be already doing it. I think we will start about the time synchronization. I would like to start from my friend Maninder from Tech Mahindra, because he is having a global interaction also. So please tell me, what is your perception of the difficulty and challenges in this time synchronization guideline?
So I hope I'm audible. I think when you go back and look at this guideline, it is quite critical. And when you're especially looking at time synchronization, I think it's important to actually go back and figure out what's been the events that have basically gone ahead and taken place. But when you take a step back and look at the number of devices, whether it's IoT devices, whether it's any of the servers, the systems, and all those particular things, effectively what you're coming back and saying is the timestamps, whatever is a log that's been generated, has to be exactly the same. Now when you look at the certain guidelines, you've come back and basically told it has to be the Indian servers that's basically there. And if you take a step back on that particular domain and look at global organizations and organizations that crisscross various different geographies, it will actually become a lot more complicated for them to actually go ahead and look at it. If this particular server is based out of India, then you need to synchronize with these particular systems. If it is this particular server is based out of another location, it has to synchronize with a different one. So that's one complication that comes up about the implementability of that particular information. If it was a slightly broader in saying that there is not only one geography, but you're going back and talking about the GMT-based systems or something like that, that would have been a lot more easier as well. That's number one. The second aspect is when you take a step back and also look at, would the individual products allow you to go back and synchronize with those things, especially as you get into the IoT devices and some of those particular areas, they have a very small a fingerprint of what is actually running on their particular systems. And when you start looking at it from that perspective, the synchronization might be quite challenging. But I think it's needed, it's important, but the implementation is going to be a challenge. Over to you, Mr.
Any specific questions on this? Time synchronization, any problems? Yeah. Okay, I understand this thing, that it is subcontracted or something like that. Now, the government has also issued an FAQ document following this. They have addressed this kind of issues where you have got multiple persons who are involved in providing any kind of service. Then whoever identifies who is involved, all of them are responsible. Now if you are having a subcontractor under a contract, you are the person who has to comply. So you have to incorporate it in the contract that he should also comply. Okay. Then if there is a breach by either you or him, whoever identifies the breach should report to the CERT-In directly. That is, your subcontractors in GDPR and other things we say, you report to the data controller. That is sufficient. No, here it is a legal liability for every IT owner in India. So the subcontractor also has got a liability under Indian law. You also have got a liability under Indian law. Both of you should report. It is their headache that there is duplication in a way. So as far as you are concerned, ensure that you are to put it in your contract. And maybe I will ask Mr. Prakash to add or say reject my suggestion. Yeah.
No question of rejecting what you said, sir. So, see, the point is, when you're hiring, let's take an Indian server itself, or like you hired AWS. What I understand from my legal folks, of course, they have spoken to various technical folks, is that these servers are all synchronized with the Indian clock. NIC. That's what they say. Now the catch is, see, you are putting, how you are using the AWS server. I'm just using AWS for the sake of it. It could be any server in India. So, like, are you giving control to them, or you're only using their rack space and everything is being controlled by you? Then that contract of asking them to make the timestamp doesn't make any sense. But if the timestamp is controlled by them, then yes, definitely you must have that in your contract. That's what I would suggest actually.
Okay, fine. So, anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, just to add the time synchronization what sir is mentioning. The CERT-In doesn't enforce that you need to sync with only Indian time servers. You need to ensure that it has to be matched with the Indian time servers. The time has to be matched, not necessarily to sync with the Indian time server. You can use any time server which you are using on the cloud platform and not necessarily to maintain as a IST time. That is what I wanted to highlight.
Yeah, you're right actually. They have mentioned there in one place that you can also use UTC.
Yeah, fine. Okay. We'll go to another point. Now, as far as the point of contact is concerned, now I would like both of you to tell us, has a point of contact been appointed, designated in your organization?
Yes, I am Ganesh from Power System Operation Corporation. We are in the business of, monopoly business of managing the Indian power grid, integrated power system round the clock. I work in the control center. So we get data round the clock. It is manned, and we get round the clock, we get data from, in South India, we get from around over 600 locations. I mean, these are substations, generating stations and critical stations, including renewable stations. So we get the data from all these stations. And then we have multiple OT systems and single IT system. So definitely definitely certain guidelines we are following. Over and above that, we are also declared as we are under NCIIPC. We are declared as a national critical infrastructure. So those guidelines also we have to follow. And under both these and also our ministry, it is compulsory for us to appoint a CISO for each unit. So we have appointed. By chance, I am the CISO, appointed as the CISO of this Southern Regional Load Dispatch Center. So I am the CISO. I have a deputy CISO who is among the audience. He is sitting. He came with me. Okay. So we have a CISO and an alternate CISO when I go on leave.
National NIIPC,
NCIIPC.
Yeah.
National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Committee.
Yeah, that was the one which in the 2008 specified, and it was meant for government organizations of that nature.
Public sector and government, direct government.
Now I am saying that whether it is right or wrong, in fact, I am not very happy with the government declaring ICICI Bank and others as protected systems. But having done that, they have taken the private sector also as if it is a national critical infrastructure system and impose section 70 on them, which is something which is to be noted, because many of you may be even service providers to some critical agencies. If you are a service provider to a critical agency, they will be putting contractual obligations on you equivalent to whatever is applicable to them. Therefore, by proxy, you are having as much responsibility as a critical infrastructure.
Now, one difference is that certain, it applies to everyone, whether you are government or. But national critical infrastructure, what happens is, our entire inventory, information inventory is given. This list is given to the NCIIPC. That inventory is given, and lot of information is given to them, and they also monitor our system from the central location.
What I say is, this.
In addition to our own monitoring, they also monitor.
Once a company is declared as a protected system, these liabilities will also attach to them.
Yeah, they monitor and they also give us alerts, advisories, alerts.
You are comfortable as a government organization.
It's one more layer of protection, but it doesn't take away your responsibility.
Agreed.
Under CERT-In.
Yes, but you are not so uncomfortable with the.
They are another level of defense. See, like I will say, NCIIPC is like our in the physical defense. They defend our country, our army, our armed forces. he is our cyber defense
I
for
will-
our,
I
for
will
our
ask-
government assets.
I will ask our private sector person, Tech Mahindra, if tomorrow it is declared as a private, Section 70 company, what will be his reaction?
So let me just give a slightly different steer to it, right? And if you're looking at the current geopolitical situation, and especially the Ukraine war and some of those aspects, one of the critical things that did happen was you had a physical war that's basically foot on thing. You basically had foot soldiers and armory basically going on, but at the same time when the war was basically invoked, you had a cyber war that started. And when you actually look at a cyber war, it doesn't differentiate between government and private. And when you're looking at the thing, in this environment that we are talking about, if a power generation plant which is basically owned by a private entity, if your phone network which is basically owned by a private entity, and we can continue with some of those particular aspects, if those go down, what happens, right? And practically, if you look at it, the communication satellites were basically knocked off, you had the ATMs knocked off and all that. They are critical infrastructure. And a enemy will not come back and basically look at private or government, right? So that's where I would actually come back and say the differentiation is not about the ownership, but the differentiation
Agreed.
is about the criticality.
Agreed, but once a declaration like that is made, you will have to send all your information security policies, one copy to the
Yes.
CERT-In director and ask for his confirmation whether it is okay or not.
No,
So one
submit.
key aspect that actually comes up, right? It's one point of going and giving some of this information. But what we should also go back and look at is how does that particular information benefit multiple organizations? How does it actually come back and benefit a public at large? Two aspects, right? Because if you're going back and saying, yes, here is the threat vector that's coming back and attacking you, can this information be circulated in an anonymous form and saying that these are the types of threats basically coming in and given to multiple platforms? So that's where the TIPS, threat intelligence platforms basically come in. So acquisition of that information is one part of it. How do you go back and use that information? I think that is going to bring in adoption a lot more. If I just have obligation but no usage of that, I'm going to make a very funny statement. It's like tax, right? I don't mind paying a tax as long as I get services, right?
Okay,
So,
okay. You want to add something?
No, I was only trying to tell that they are just giving us another layer of monitoring. They even put honeypots in our premises, log collectors in our premises, and they centrally monitor what they, from the government's point of view, what is the, and it happens to be the majority in critical sectors. Definitely, in critical sectors.
Yeah.
I'm not telling across all sectors.
Now, I accept that you are a government organization.
So they have done this.
Mentally, you are quite happy with certain doing all this. Now, I
No,
want
but
to
one
know.
problem is we have multiple agencies monitoring us. That is one problem also.
Agreed,
So,
agreed.
we are reporting to CERT-In,
No, it's
we are
good.
reporting to NCIIPC. Even your intelligence, they also write to us when they see some traffic. They write to us to explain and give us a complaint, give them also a complaint. So multiple agencies. If we can simplify this into a single agency, everybody, including government, we would be happy.
Now, I want some CISO here to tell me if there is a super CISO who sits in Delhi from ministry and sends you emails, what will be your reaction to that? You are happy, unhappy, or whatever it is, that please tell me. Share your thoughts. Yeah, okay. Now, he gave a very diplomatic answer. What he said is correct, that if my services are critical, I will accept that. That is fine. But that is not only when a data breach has happened. Once you are declared as a protected system, it is not only responding when there is a data breach. It is sharing the data on a regular basis. Like he says, honeypots are my premises. Now, can this, and managed by CERT-In perhaps, I don't know. So, whether that kind of intrusive monitoring of information security of the private sector is comfortable. Balaraman can say something about this. If you don't like it, please say you don't like it. I would be quite happy. Okay. Say, we are raising this for debate, basically, so that...
See, it's a very debatable topic, sir. I mean, It's a comfort zone. And the most important thing is, I'm sure Maninder will all will agree to it, it is not about authority. They should also know the context of the business which I'm running in. Because I may be a CISO of a manufacturing firm versus a pharma firm versus an automobile versus an IT sector or a banking, right? Or a hotel industry also. So, just by invoking section 70, and if he's going to ask, can I please review the policies, I don't think, I mean, they are very much capable of it, but I don't think they are required to do it. As Maninder rightly put across, they need to figure out ways as to how to protect the country rather than focusing on individual companies and, breaking it down. The overall infra has to be taken into constraint. Today, we are in a situation where we are not able to control the sale of a SIM card and locate persons.
See, I don't know whether CERT was fully aware of the responsibilities it was taking when they declared ICICI Bank and HDFC Bank as protected systems. So, I only raised this issue because if you declare it, then you are bound by the 2016 some guideline is there, and you said they are not required, but there is a duty. And suppose some stray advocate in Delhi files a public interest litigation, why you did not do this for ICICI Bank? Why you are doing it for power systems or something like that? Why are you preferring this? There will be an issue.
No, the problem is, sorry for a very common proverb which I commonly state to my team members. The dog only should wag the tail cannot wag the dog. We only create systems, we only create policies, and we blame them. With that, I just stop there because it may go a little different.
Okay.
Sir, one point I will add, the government is doing it because he is the owner. He is the owner of all
In your
these.
case,
Yeah.
I understand that. That is
So
why.
as an owner, he is protecting his assets.
That's why I
So
said.
we are comfortable with that. He is our owner.
Agreed. That's what I was telling, that we were thinking that this provision will be implemented only for government systems. Now suddenly it has been done for private sector. Why it has been done, they have not explained. I have actually asked them to explain. In fact, those notifications are not easily available in this thing. Okay. Anyway, that is just for you to again highlight, CERT-In has got that power. Yeah, tell me.
The CERT-In guidelines.
In the hands of the CERT-In director. Okay. Then sometimes many of these breaches don't cause any harm at all. It is a harmless breach. In that case, there may not be any further damage. But if it is a harmful breach, then there will be somebody else who is claiming some damages, and at that time, you will not have any protection of the section 79 and other things of Information Technology Act. You will be liable for 3 years imprisonment or whatever is that. And this imprisonment term extends not only to the company as a juridical person, to the executive in charge of the business and the directors individually, because I cannot put the company in jail. I can only put the CEO.
So,
Yes.
talking about a hypothetical situation, supposedly I'm running a food company with respect to an incident that happened a year back with Jubilant Foodworks, Domino's. Now, the company does not know the breach has happened,
Correct?
but it's already published in the darknet,
Yes.
and from there, CERT-In gets to know it.
Yes.
What's the company supposed to do at that point of time?
That is knowledge. Knowledge in the public. Now, if it has come to the knowledge of CERT-In, you also, if you are reasonably alert to the situation, you are expected to get it. If you say that even after 3-4 days, if you go back to CERT-In and say, sir, you have seen this, but I have not seen this, that will indicate your deficiency in your alert systems. For example, even individuals like us, we put a Google alert. Now, if anywhere anything about Navi appears, I get a report. Why should I do that? I don't have any legal liability, but still I do it. Companies should have that. You are already perhaps doing it as a part of reputation management. Now, reputation management is done by your marketing department. Now, information security department has to ask that I also have a stake in that. If you know anything which has come about me in any newspaper anywhere in the world, you must have subscriptions to some security services and other things who report on deep web activities, and you should be able to tell that reputation management person, please copy all the incoming reports to me. So if you don't do it, it will be your negligence. Okay?
So just to add to that, see, your company also will be certified in some of the ISO. If you are unaware that there is an incident happen, it is acceptable by the CERT-In. But you are aware and not reporting, that there the punishment comes.
Okay, I think our...
Sorry, sir, just one point
Yeah.
I wanted to make, and the company directors. See, that's a gray area. If nothing is mentioned, they can come behind the directors. But if you do a board resolution and say that, you know, XYZ person is going to be responsible for reporting CISO breach, etc., if you look at the Legal Metrology Act, it allows you to do that. The same way, then you can take an umbrage that, you know, this person, the board has directed this person to handle this and report to the CERT-In. Then obviously the CERT-In will first look at that person before they look at the board members. So that's something which you can think.
Yeah, this is the due diligence, which is compliance policy, CERT-In compliance policy. One thing you have to do is, when you go back to your offices, who is your 24/7 point of contact for CERT-In guidelines? And I would say that it should be done by a board resolution or something like that. CISO can assume that role, but I don't want CISOs to automatically assume that role, because then 24/7 availability, everything becomes that much more critical. I also told you what to do when a person goes on leave or not available. So a lot of things have to be put in place. Pardon? Okay, fine. And that has to be available on the website. If it is not available on your company website, I will assume that you have not done. Fine. Now, log records, 180 days. Any issues?
Records for each and every system. That's going to be a very interesting point. And in case the system itself gets compromised, you'll need to keep those particular log records in a different place so that it's accessible when required. Right? So it's not an easy task, and it's across each and every device.
Yes, nothing is easy, but you have to find ways of doing it. Yes.
Just one quick point I will add to this. It is pretty, I mean, although it is complex, it is manageable. But in a industry like mine, I have 3 OT systems and 1 IT systems under one building. And then just saying that keep the log of all the systems, they have come at different time scale, managed by different vendors, different software, and all of them are production systems. They must be available 100%.
Yeah.
Because round the clock we are serving all the customers.
Agreed.
So
Now,
what happens here is, when it is running, I cannot intervene and put something there. And when I try to put some SIEM also now to integrate all those things, then also what happens now is that MAA, again you can touch upon if you have time, that due to that also we are not able to implement many of the state-of-the-art systems which can integrate with 3 OTs and 1 IT and all those things. Off the shelf, nothing is available. It is a big project. So there is a problem in maintaining for all the equipments, all the systems.
Majorly I handle itself. So just to add to 180 days challenge, now all of us, we are aware that Facebook has started somewhere in 2004 and Instagram in 2011. Do you expect them to delete your photos or videos from there? Answer is no. Right? Then what is the criticality in storing the logs which has very less KBs? So it is a only mindset. If somebody is asking like, where is your license, where is your helmet? We don't want to follow. Otherwise it is doable.
yeah.
Well, I have a slightly extremely expensive. And when the financials part of it comes back and hits, it's much more difficult to actually go ahead and store this particular information. You're talking about each and every log. And there could be, in one system, there could be multiple elements that are basically creating a particular log. And so when you practically go back and look at and put financial systems aside and money aside, then I would agree that it's a theoretical situation of saying you can store logs as much as you want. And on the other context that you gave, the reason they store that information is because you're the product, right? Because they want to go back, get that information, use that information in various different manners. So I have a slight disagreement, but I think financially might not be feasible to actually go back and store all information. It has to be the critical infrastructure, critical information might be a lot more easier.
See, some clarity may be required on what devices involved in that. There have been cyber crimes involving process changes and other things. So maybe even that log records may be required. Anyway, I'm expanding the responsibility too much for the CISOs. I'm sure most of them are unhappy that I'm not giving them full time for discussion. But anyway, a couple of questions on the. No, wait. I'll complete my portion of that. This registration of subscribers, I just wanted to mention why I put it in bold. This part has the whole 28.4 circular was supposed to be implemented in 60 days, within 60 days. This registration of subscribers, extension of time has been given this for up to 28th of September, 25th of September. Along with this, the MSMEs have been given that extension. But non-MSMEs are not given extension of time in respect of everything other than the registration. So all of you should have been in compliance from 28th of June 2022. If you have not done that, you are already in non-compliance. My last question is to Mr. Prakash on the KYC. What are the organizations to which this KYC thing will be applicable? 5 years record? Only for fintech or?
No, it would be applicable to data centers, virtual private service providers, cloud service providers, and VPN service providers.
Yeah.
To all of them.
Yeah. And on this recreation capability, any of you have got any comment to make? Is it feasible, not feasible? Is it expensive? Expense, ultimately, compliance will always be expensive. So I don't know whether that alone can be there, but yeah, please tell me.
So I would say it's always a cost of compliance that basically comes in. And when you're going back and looking at recreation, right, it's practically going back and looking at whether you'll look at overwriting of those particular records. You need to have that information about how did it basically get overwritten and some of that particular information. But I think I would always go back and vouch for there is always a 80-20 rule, right, Barrow's principle. When you're going ahead and looking at 80% of the effort that goes on 20% of the criticality, that kind of a particular perspective, they need to bring in that level of 80-20 rule in saying critical systems, you should be able to go back and put in additional controls. In that way, the cost of controls will basically become manageable. If you put the same level of controls across all the organization, it doesn't really work. And if you get into the risk principles as well, you always go back and look at risk-based audits. You always keep the risk principles in the central point.
See, this 180 days logs is a rollover. So as far as the data storage is concerned, it is a rollover basis. And one minute, I will come back to you. You will have the last word. Okay. Then as far as this transaction records are there, even several years back, I had seen that one Bangalore person somewhere in Malleshwaram had a hardware device to be plugged into the network which could recreate it. So there may be solutions available for that. So if you look out, probably you will get the right kind of
Sir, one quick thought on the recreation.
Yeah, please.
Sir, when you have the logs for 180 days.
Keep it with you for 180 days. If they ask, within that 180 days you will give. But remember, when a cyber crime is reported and you have a data packet is associated with the cyber crime, this is no longer a log record. It is an evidence of a crime. And that has to be taken out, archived permanently almost. Don't delete it after 180 days and say I have deleted it in the normal course.
That becomes a forensic evidence. Until the case is closed, you have to keep it there.
Because that becomes an offense under IPC for destruction of evidence. Okay, so archival is different, this is different. Okay.
Sir, 1 minute before we give. So, like Navi sir mentioned, a lot of people from the industry had consulted the minister, and the minister had said that he is not going to give any extension, and that's how only those two things came. Registration of subscribers, they gave a time for that, and for MSME they gave. Obviously, the industry is of course represented because they have their own problems, like you've heard from all our panelists. I'll just read out 1 or 2 points which I noted down in case you are not aware, maybe you could understand. One other point which has gone is that they have said that you need to define clearly, or rather differentiate between severe and large scale incidents, and basically give a separate criteria for both, and don't put all of them in the same bucket. Then the second request that has gone is to change that 6 hours to 72 hours. Because globally it's 72 hours, so everybody has been asking that 6 hours is too short a time. That's one more request which has gone. The third request that has gone is flexibility in log keeping requirements, because the reasoning that has been put forward is that in the cloud environment, customer controls what logs are generated. So if you are a service provider, you may not even know what logs are getting generated there, but the responsibility falls on you. So that's a point which has been put to the government. On the KYC piece, of course, the 5 years is a huge burden, like you heard from my friend here. Anything if you were to do with data storage is costs, and to hold data for 5 years, it will cost a lot for the companies. And the last piece that they have said is, reporting obligations should, actually apply to end user businesses and not to third-party service providers. That's another request they have made. So these are the few points which the industry associations have made here.
Thank you. Yes.
Sir, you are saying retention of log for 180 days. Which log we need to retain? Just security, application, system, network, what? One system does contain approximately 1.5 GB per day. If any organization does have 100 plus system or 500 plus systems, almost 1 petabyte of the storage we needed.
See, whatever is related to the security, you have to identify, and all of you should have a policy. In fact, CERT-In actually makes a reference to even when you define a breach, what is a breach, it makes a reference to your policy. So you must have an information security policy. If you have this kind of apprehensions, better put that into that information security policy. These are related to security, these are related to functional aspects of these things. Then you may be able to take some leverage out of it. But better you please inform CERT-In that this is your policy, please provide me the confirmation. Okay, then your responsibility will be less.
So that means these logs are just related to the security, nothing the entire log of the system.
No, I'll just look at the last one, right? When you're talking about recreation of each of those particular activities. And being a techie, you'll realize that if you want to recreate that, you will need to have various other logs apart from the security log.
So ultimately we are talking about the full system log.
Not necessarily full system. See, full system means if it is a server, you need desktops or laptop. That things you can keep it in mind. You need not to enable all the logs in Windows servers. If you start enabling, it will overkill your business.
No, that is why I want to class security, because one application breach is also a security. Then in that case, you need application log also.
Recreation facility, I think, is meant for transactions. When we say transaction, it is between the company and an external person. That is my present understanding of that. Please go through the FAQ document once again if you want. You may be able to get more clarity. And that FAQ document has been developed based on the industry questions which have been raised. If you have something more, it is time for you to ask CERT-In that I am still not fully comfortable with your FAQ. You please answer this. I am sure they will answer. No, don't worry. In fact, you should have a conference on CERT-In guidelines and invite the CERT-In Director General to come and address you. See, that is the industry initiative you have to take. I think I have taken more time than what our people would like to allow. Anyway, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to extend also. Thank you, friends. Yeah.